Wyoming Territory, 1884. He almost rode past her. Caleb Whitfield had been pushing his horse hard since the sky broke open an hour outside of town, leaning into weather with a particular focus. A man who had 3 miles left between himself and a dry barn and meant to close the distance before dark finished the job the storm had started. The road had gone to soup, the kind that pulled at a horse's legs with every stride. The wind came from the west, then straight down, then from the west again, undecided about which way it wanted to punish the valley. That was when he saw her, a shape at the tree line that didn't belong there. Too straight for a fence post, too small for the cottonwood behind it. He pulled up short and turned in the saddle. A woman, she stood with her shoulder braced against the trunk, bent forward slightly, in the particular posture of someone who has stopped pretending the weather will pass. Her shawl was soaked through and past doing its job. Her hair had come loose and was plastered dark against her face. Mud had climbed her boots past the ankle, and she was holding something against her chest, both arms wrapped tight around it, the way a person makes their own body into a roof when there's nothing else left to offer. He reined in beside her. "Ma'am." She looked up. Her eyes were quick and careful, doing 2 things at once, reading him the way a person reads a stranger on an empty road, and trying not to let him see how tired she was underneath it. "We're fine," she said. It was not, by any measure, true. "You're soaked through," he said. "Sun's going down, and the temperature's going with it." She glanced at the horse, at him, at the road ahead, which offered nothing but more rain. The bundle in her arms shifted, and a thin cry rose out of it. "That a baby?" "My son." Flat, final, as if daring him to make something of it. Caleb looked at this woman standing alone at the edge of Wyoming in a storm, holding a child like she was the last wall standing between it and the cold. And he thought of his father, 6 years gone now, who used to say a man's whole character showed on a bad road, and whether he stopped, and whether he made a stranger explain themselves before he'd offer a hand. He held his out. "Name's Caleb Whitfield. Ranch is a mile on. I've got a barn, a house, and a fire, and you're welcome to all 3. She didn't take it right away. He could see her working something out, not just the weather and the mile, but something heavier that made the calculation take longer than it should have. "You don't know me," she said. "No," he agreed. "I know it's getting dark and it's getting cold, and you're carrying a baby." She looked at the sky one more time, at whatever answer she'd been searching it for. Then, "May we sleep in your barn?" "You'll sleep in the house," he said, and reached down. She took his hand. He pulled her up on a wagon bench, and she settled the bundle in her lap, and Caleb clicked his tongue, and the wagon rolled on toward home through the rain. The house had been built for 2 people and had held only one for 2 winters. It showed the way empty spaces always show. Not in neglect, because Caleb wasn't a man who let things fall apart, but in a particular stillness, the kind a place takes on when it's kept without being lived in fully. One chair pulled out at the table, one coat on a hook built for 2, a photograph on the mantel, and beside it, a bare space where a second one used to sit. Ellery Marsh noticed all of it inside the first minute. She noticed the way she noticed most things. Quietly, filing away, building a picture before anyone had told her a single fact. The man who'd stopped for her was a widower, not wealthy, but not without means. The house was solid, the windows clean and cared for, kept the way a man keeps something he still respects, even after he stopped expecting to love it again. Then she saw the cradle, pushed into the corner of the main room. Dust settled into the grain of it, in particular way of something set aside, not forgotten, built small for a newborn, never used as far as she could see. She didn't ask, but before the week was out, she understood that Caleb Whitfield would tell her anyway. If the stories that you settled already, do me a quick favor. Tap that like button. And if you're new here, subscribe so you're with us for the next one too. Every bit of support helps this channel keep telling stories, like this one. Now back to the ranch. The fever came on the 3rd night, close to 2 in the morning. Ellery woke to it before she understood what had woken her. Silas hot against her side, that particular dry, papery heat that meant something had taken hold. She sat up fast, running through what the midwife back in Ohio had taught her to check. Breathing quick, but not labored. Color high, not gray. He was sick, not in danger. Not yet. She needed hot water and cool cloths, and she was in a stranger's house, and it was the middle of the night. She carried him to the kitchen as quietly as the floorboard allowed, and she was still filling a small pot at the basin when the light shifted behind her. Caleb stood in the doorway in his shirt sleeves, a lamp in one hand, looking like a man who hadn't been fully asleep to begin with. "Fever," she said low. "I need hot water." He took the pot from her without a word and had the stove coals awake and 2 more pieces of wood on before she'd finished explaining. He didn't ask how bad. He asked how high. High enough to worry me, not high enough to frighten me yet. "Go sit with him. I'll bring it." She went. She sat with Silas on the edge of the spare bed, a damp cloth on his forehead, talking to him in a low, wordless voice that mothers keep for exactly this. Not language, just the sound of you are not alone in this. Silas was awake and unhappy about it, looking up at her with a flat, wronged expression of a baby who expects the person in charge of the world to fix whatever's gone sideways in it. Caleb came in with the water, a cup, a shallow bowl. He looked at Silas for a moment, and something crossed his face. There and managed before it could finish arriving. Then he sat down in the corner chair without being invited to and without being told to leave. She let him stay. He didn't talk much. He kept the fire fed and the lamp trimmed. Once he went back to the kitchen for more water and came back and sat again, elbows on his knees, watching the two of them with the look of a man who hadn't chosen this and had already decided against walking away from it. By 3, Silas finally slept, the deep, spent sleep of a small body that has finished fighting something. Ellery felt the ache settle into her arms. 3 hours of holding catching up at her all at once. She looked up. Caleb was still watching. "He's sleeping," she said. "I can see that. You should sleep too. I'm fine in the chair." She looked at him then, really looked, the way she hadn't let herself since the road, and thought about a man sitting up half the night in his own house for a woman he'd known 3 days. She didn't say what she was thinking. She said, "Thank you for stopping." He looked toward the window, where the rain had thinned to a steady drip off the eaves. "My father used to say a man stopped for people on the road. It wasn't a virtue to him, just a habit." "Some habits are virtues," she said. He didn't answer that, but he didn't leave the chair either, and she understood that was his own kind of answer. The fever broke before sunrise, and by the time Caleb came in from the barn at 6, there was coffee on the stove and biscuits in the Dutch oven, and the pantry had been quietly rearranged in his absence. He stood in the doorway a moment too long, looking for the coffee tin. "Second shelf," Ellery said, not looking up from Silas, who was propped against her shoulder and unbothered by the world's slow morning. "Where it stays dry." It was dry where it was. It was also invisible behind 3 sacks of beans. He found it. He said nothing else about it that morning. But 3 days later, when Silas needed a warmer cap than the one he'd traveled in, Caleb came back from town with a small knitted one, sized correctly, and set it on the table without comment. "You didn't need to do that," she said. "He was cold on the porch yesterday. I can tell you what he needs. Next time, just ask." He looked at her a beat too long before he answered. "I will." It was a small exchange. She noticed, the way she noticed most things, that he'd taken the correction without flinching from it. That mattered more to her than the cap did. There were things neither of them asked yet. She caught herself checking the road from the kitchen window some mornings, longer than the view warranted. Once, when he moved her coat from the hook by the door, a folded paper slid partway from the pocket, and she took it back quickly enough that he understood it mattered before he understood what it was. He didn't ask. For his part, there were rooms in his own silence he hadn't opened for her either. The second chair he never explained. The cradle in the corner he walked past every day without looking at directly. She noticed that, too, and didn't push. It was on the 4th evening, with Silas finally down for the night, that he told her anyway. Her name was Anna, he said, not looking up from the fire. 14 years on this land, wanting the same things I wanted. She was carrying our first that winter, 2 winters back now. The baby came too early, too wrong to fix. He was quiet a moment. We lost them both by morning. She didn't offer him comfort dressed up as words. She let the silence hold what it needed to hold, and then she said only, "I'm sorry." "Thank you," he said, the way a man says it when he's had 2 winters to practice receiving it. He didn't say anything more, and she didn't ask him to. Some things, she understood, were owed exactly as much room as a person chose to give them. No more. The fire burned low that night, the way it did most nights now. Ellery sat with the mending in her lap, needle moving in the unhurried rhythm of a woman who'd done this by firelight her whole life. Silas lay on a blanket near the hearth, working through the serious business of examining his own hands, turning them over as if they belonged to someone else, and he meant to figure out whose. Caleb sat across from her, with a book he wasn't reading. He'd been on the same page for the better part of 20 minutes. He's trying to figure out how they work, Ellery said, watching Silas. No, Caleb said. He's trying to figure out who he is. The hands are just where he started. She looked up at that. He didn't look away. Neither of them named what passed between them in the firelight. It didn't need naming yet. But something in the house had shifted. Quietly, the way weather shifts before anyone's willing to call it change in season, and both of them felt it settle into the room and stay. The signs built slowly enough that Caleb told himself for 2 days he was imagining them. Ellery had taken to standing at the kitchen window longer than the dishes required, watching the road south the way a person watches something they expect to arrive and dread arriving in equal measure. On Tuesday, a rider passed the far fence line, a stranger heading toward town, nothing more, and she went still to sound of hose in a way that had nothing to do with curiosity. She didn't come to the window that time. She stayed exactly where she was until the sound had faded past hearing, and then she went back to what she'd been doing, as if nothing had happened at all. He noticed. He didn't ask. He'd learned enough about her in 2 weeks to know that Ellery Marsh did not respond well to a question aimed straight at her. She needed to walk up to a thing herself, in her own time or not at all. So he waited, the way his father had taught him to wait on a spooked horse. Not still exactly, but patient, present, unhurried. She told him on the 6th evening, after Silas was down and the fire had settled into its low, steady burn. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and I need you to let me finish before you say anything." He set his book down. "All right." She folded her hands on the table the way a person folds their hands before a task they've been dreading and decided to do anyway. "My husband's name was Daniel. We had 4 good years on a small place outside Millersburg, Ohio. Last spring, he bought a horse on credit from a trader named Otis Renner, a man who has a reputation for calling debts however suits him best. 3 weeks later, Daniel was thrown from that horse and didn't wake up again. Caleb didn't move. He didn't offer anything. He'd learned that much from her already, too. Renner came to me before the ground had even settled over the grave." She went on. "Not for money outright. He had a different proposal. He said the debt could be considered paid in full if I signed Silas over, indentured to him until he's 18, to work off what Daniel owed. He had a paper drawn up already. He told me which room in his house the boy would sleep in, like he'd already decided the matter before he'd asked me a single question. And the law in that county belongs to men Renner drinks with." Her voice didn't rise. It went flatter, if anything, the way a voice goes when a person said something so many times in their own head that saying it out loud costs less than it should. "I wait to find out whether the paper would hold. I took what I could carry and what I could sew into a hem, and I left before he came back with witnesses." She looked up at him then, steady, giving him the chance to react however he intended to. "He's still looking," she said. "A man like that doesn't let a debt walk off on its own 2 feet. I don't know how far behind us he is. I don't know if he's behind us at all yet, or if I've just been walking scared for 6 weeks over nothing." Caleb was quiet for a moment, turning it over the way he turned over a bad fence line, before deciding how to fix it. Then he said, "There's a circuit judge out of Larkspur, man named Foss. My father did business with him for 20 years, honest as they come, and he owes Otis Renner exactly nothing. If Renner shows up with a debt paper claiming a childless payment, Foss will laugh him out of the county. You don't know that for certain." "No," he agreed, "but I know Foss, and I know what he thinks of men who try to buy children with paper. Let me ride out and speak to him, before Renner gets anywhere near this valley, not after." She looked at him for a long moment, something moving behind her eyes that hadn't been there a minute before. Not quite relief. Not yet. You don't have to do this. This isn't your trouble. It walked out of the rain and sat down at your table uninvited. Maybe, I mean it, Caleb, if Renner comes here and finds out you've taken sides, that a debt collector's grudge landing on your ranch instead of just mine, I could take Silas and go before that happens. Find somewhere he has no reason to look. You could, Caleb said, you could keep walking until your feet give out, same as you were doing on that road. Or you could let somebody stand next to you for once instead of in front of you. She didn't answer that right away. I'm not doing this because I feel obligated, he said, quieter now. I want to. There's a difference, and I'd like you to trust one know which one this is. Something in her face eased just slightly. Not surrender, but the loosening of a grip that had been closed too tight for too long. All right, she said, go talk to your judge. He rode out the next morning before the frost had burned off the grass. He was back before noon with Foss's word that any paper Renner tried to present would need to survive a hearing in front of a man who had no patience for debts settled in children. It should have felt like enough. It lasted 4 days. On the 5th, Luke Hargrove rode up from the south pasture at a pace that had nothing leisurely about it, pulling his horse up hard enough that it half reared in the yard. Stranger in town, he said, before he'd even swung down, asking after a woman traveling with a baby. 2 men with him. He's been at it since yesterday. The hotel, the mercantile, the livery, asking real specific. Caleb felt something in his chest go cold and steady at once. A particular calm that came over him when the problem stopped being a possibility and became a fact with location. Did he give a name? Luke nodded. Renner, Otis Renner, behind Caleb, in the kitchen doorway. Ellery had gone very still, Silas on her hip, her eyes fixed on a road that ran south toward town, toward whatever was already closer than either of them had let themselves believe. Renner arrived at 3 the next afternoon, exactly the way a man arrives when he wants the arrival itself to do some of his talking for him. A wagon. 2 men riding alongside for the look of authority rather than any use they'd likely be, and Renner himself up front, a folded paper visible in his breast pocket, like he meant to be seen before he meant to be read. Caleb was in the yard when the wagon came up the track. Ellery came out onto the porch behind him, Silas on her hip, and didn't stay there. She came down the steps and out into the open, and Caleb didn't try to stop her. She hadn't hidden from Renner in 6 weeks of running. She wasn't going to start now that she'd stopped. Renner brought the wagon up short and looked at her, then at Caleb, then back at her, with a particular smile of a man who has already decided how a conversation is going to go before it started. Mrs. Marsh, he said, you've led me a fair chase. You've wasted a fair amount of your own time then, she said, since there's nothing here for you to collect. There's a debt, ma'am, owed and unpaid. I've got the note right here, plain as anything, and a document drawn up in good order specifying how it's to be satisfied. He patted the pocket. I'd hope we could handle this without trouble. There's no version of taking a child that doesn't involve trouble, Mr. Renner. Her voice didn't climb. It stayed level. The same voice she'd used telling Caleb Holbert 3 nights before. A woman who had said this argument over and over in her own head until it had worn smooth. A debt is paid in money, in property, in labor freely entered into by a grown man. It is not paid in a boy who never signed anything and never owed you a cent of it. Any judge in this territory will tell you the same, and I intend to make sure one does, formally, the moment you try to press this. Renner's smile held, but something behind it had started working harder to stay in place. That paper's been reviewed by men who know the law better than a rancher's house guest. Then it won't trouble you to have it reviewed again, Caleb said, stepping up beside her, not in front of her, beside her, the way a man stands when he intends to be present rather than to take over. Judge Foss out of Larkspur is expecting you whenever you'd like to make the trip. He's already familiar with particulars. One of the 2 men with Renner shifted in his saddle and looked off toward the road behind them, the specific look of a man recalculating what exactly he'd agreed to ride along for. The other studied his own hands on the reins like they'd suddenly become interesting. Renner looked between them, and whatever he read there didn't help his case. This isn't finished, he said, but the words had gone thinner than they'd started. It can be today if you like, Ellery said. or can go in front of Judge Foss, and you can explain to him exactly what you intended to do with a baby who isn't yours and never will be. Your choice, Mr. Renner. Mine's already made." He held her gaze a moment longer, looking for something to say that would put the conversation back on his terms. He didn't find it. He turned the wagon instead, and the two men turned with him, considerably faster than they'd arrived, and the whole party rode back down the track and out of the valley without another word. Ellery watched until the dust had settled. Then she let out a breath she seemed to have been holding since Ohio. "You didn't need me for that," Caleb said. "No," she said, "but I'm glad you were standing there anyway." That evening, after Silas had been fed and settled and the yard had gone quiet under a sky clearing for the first time in days, Caleb found her on the porch steps. "Ellery." She looked up. "Would you still have me ask you to stay?" he said. "If Renner had never existed at all? If there'd been no debt, no paper, no man riding into my yard to remind us both what's at stake?" She was quiet a moment, turning the question over honestly instead of answering it too quickly. "I don't know," she said. "I might have kept walking if there'd been nothing chasing me toward you." "Then I'm glad he came," Caleb said, "because the trouble only made me say it sooner. It didn't put anything in me that wasn't there already." He took a breath. "I want you to stay, Ellery. Not because you've nowhere else to go. Because I've spent 2 winters in a house that only remembered how to be a home again once you and Silas were in it." She held his gaze the way she'd held Renner's. Steady, unflinching, a woman who had learned the hard way not to give her answers away cheaply. "Ask me properly," she said. He took her hand instead of his hat, because he had no hat to hold and no ceremony ready, only the truth of it. "Marry me, Ellery. Stay." "Yes," she said, simply the way she said the things that mattered. The debt paper never made it in front of Judge Foss. Renner's own lawyer withdrew it inside a month. Once it came out, the document lacked a lawful witness signature and had never been worth the ink it was written in. Word reached the valley that Renner had left the territory altogether by summer, his reputation having done what his paper couldn't. Caleb and Ellery married in April, in the small church at Larkspur, with the last of the mountain snow still holding to the high ground and the valley floor gone green beneath it. Silas, 13 months old and newly and fiercely committed to walking on his own terms, was held in his father's arms throughout the ceremony and voiced his opinion of the proceedings twice before deciding, on the whole, to allow them to continue. By the following winter, the cradle in the corner of the main room had been dusted, mended where a joint had loosened, and moved nearer the fire. Caleb had once believed it stood for everything the house had lost, a small, unused thing, kept because putting it away it felt like giving up a grief he wasn't ready to set down. He understood now, watching Ellery hum to the new baby cradled against her shoulder, Silas leaning beside her to inspect his sister with the same serious attention he brought to everything, that the cradle had never only been proof of what was gone. It had been waiting all along for this. That's the whole of it. A man who stopped because his father taught him to, and a woman who asked for nothing more than a barn, and found something neither of them was still looking for. If you stayed with Caleb and Ellery until the very end, thank you. If you haven't yet hit that like button or subscribe, now's the time. It helps this channel keep bringing you stories like this one. And if this one stayed with you, share it with someone who could use a little company on their drive home or their quiet evening in. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I read every one. Until next time, keep writing.